Sandra was looking doubtfully at the decorations in the restaurant. "Is something wrong, Mrs. Anderson?" the manager named Jane asked her. The girl knew that the bride herself had chosen the roses, but she did not want to enter into an argument with an unbearable client, so she promised to fix everything and replaced the white roses with red ones. When Sandra left, the girl breathed a sigh of relief. However, she was ashamed that she had changed the flowers chosen by the bride. When the woman arrived home, she began to complain to her husband about the lack of taste of her future daughter-in-law. Mr. Anderson only sighed at this. He knew about the difficult nature of his wife. 2 years ago, Stuart Anderson was a successful businessman, but unfortunately, as a result of some wrong deals, their family had become middle class. Therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson began to pin their hopes on their son James. They wanted him to marry a rich girl. Much to their regret, James chose Christina, who had grown up on a farm in Cleveland. Sandra did not like this simple girl, but she could not influence the choice of her son. Christina steadfastly endured all the discontent of her future mother-in-law. The only thing that upset her was that Sandra agreed to invite only her parents to the wedding, and not all relatives. "I don't need your poorly educated relatives at the celebration," she said to the girl. So the long-awaited day had come. There were many guests from James's side, but Christina was represented only by her parents. But when Mr. and Mrs. Wright entered the restaurant, Sandra stopped them. "Did you come to your daughter's wedding or a country fair? Couldn't you have rented costumes so as not to embarrass us here?" she said in an ugly tone. Christina's parents looked at each other. They never expected such a cold reception. At the same time, Christina discovered that the decorations had been changed. Tears welled up in her eyes. After all, she specially chose them to match with her dress. The girl burst into tears and ran out of the restaurant. Then she saw her upset parents waiting for a taxi. James came up to them. Upon learning of what had happened, he returned to the restaurant and said to his mother, "Christina and I are leaving, and you can celebrate as you wish." The young couple and the girl's parents went to a small cafe where they celebrated their wedding in a close family circle over a cup of coffee and an apple pie. "Please forgive my mother. She just cares a lot about her reputation and judges people by their clothes," James said at the end of the evening. "No problem, son. We're used to it," said the girl's father and handed him a white envelope. "This is a trip to Miami. You will spend your honeymoon in the best hotel near the ocean." "Thank you, sir. I did not expect such an expensive gift," said James. Meanwhile, back home, the boy's parents were discussing what had happened. "I just can't believe it. They dishonored us and ran away from their own wedding," Sandra said to her husband. The next day, the newlyweds did not come for dinner at the Andersons' place as it had been planned. They didn't call back the next day either. Then Mr. Anderson decided to check his son's social networks. "Honey, James and Christina are currently on their honeymoon in Miami," the man exclaimed. "Where did they get the money for this?" This question never left the minds of James's parents. Then Mr. Anderson decided to finally check who Christina's parents were. It turned out that Mr. Wright was one of the richest landowners in Cleveland. "How's it possible? They're so rich but dressed like beggars." Sandra couldn't understand. She already realized what a terrible mistake she had made. She decided to call her new relatives to smooth over the unpleasant situation, but no one picked up the phone. When the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, they decided to try to reconcile their parents and invited them to the same restaurant. The Wrights forgave the Andersons because they knew that people should only be judged by their deeds.